Welcome to the Memories of a Moonbird podcast, exploring life one story at a time. Hello, friends, and welcome to Memories of a Moonbird. I'm Daniel Sherrill. Today on the show, she began her career in casting when she was only 18 years old. A passionate lover of the arts, she herself enjoyed performing on stage even with self-proclaimed crippling audition anxiety. After realizing that acting wasn't really for her, she said, quote, "I went searching for a career that allowed me to be witness to those magical moments when a great performance aligns with beautiful words." She went on to work with huge Hollywood productions, bringing actors in for projects like Workaholics, House of Lies, Colony, Criminal Minds, Law and Order, and Star Trek Into Darkness, where she gained the admiration and respect of her peers in the TV and film community. She also quickly earned the well-deserved reputation of being one of the nicest people in casting. After close to 20 years in Los Angeles, she and her family relocated to the Southeast, where she not only continues to work in casting, but is also an acting coach, teacher, and consultant. She believes wholeheartedly in actors, and through her coaching and consultation, helps them navigate the often challenging course of the entertainment business, assuage their fears, and bring their best in the audition room. She loves what she does, and in her own words, she's a legit happy person. Please welcome, phoning in from Asheville, North Carolina, casting director Erica Silverman Bream. Erica, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here with you.
And I am really excited to talk to you. Why don't you tell everybody where you're from?
I grew up in Grand Forks, North Dakota, which is an hour north of Fargo, an hour colder than Fargo, we like to say. And then I went out to LA when I was 18 for school, and I stayed there for a long time.
What is life like in North Dakota? Not a lot of people that I know from there.
There are not a lot of people in general there. It was a great place to grow up. Grand Forks is one of the larger towns. It's where UND is. So it's a college town. Very tight-knit community. We had a really bad flood in 1997, and just the way the surrounding communities came together to help our town out and people just taking us in. It really is a very special place, but it is very cold for a very large portion of the year.
Is the wildlife there as amazing as you see in pictures and TV and movies?
I mean, I think it depends on where you go and what your version of that is. Because now I live in the mountains in Asheville, North Carolina, and we have bears and wild turkeys here and things like that. Whereas in North Dakota, I mean, I think I don't recall anything major like that. I mean, some snakes would come out in the summertime.
So there weren't herds of buffalo going through your town in the morning?
There are herds of buffalo, but they are largely contained. There was one time we were driving to the pool, and there was a big moose in the middle of the road that had us all stopped. Deer, of course, everywhere, things like that. But on the whole, I mean, I think it just depends what's relative.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So when did you first fall in love with entertainment?
Way back when. So like I said, I grew up in North Dakota, not a huge bastion of entertainment. But my grandparents, my mom's parents, lived in New Jersey, and we'd go see them, and they would always take us into New York to see a show. And I think I probably saw my first Broadway show when I was 3. I don't recall this at all, but we went to see Big River, and my mom talks about how after I was completely wrapped, and when intermission came and the first act was over, I looked at them and almost started crying and said, "Is it over?"
Oh, that's awesome.
And so I really have always been in love with theater. That was always my first love. Had some typically favorite movies when I was a kid that we watched over and over and over and over and over again.
What was one of your favorites?
Well, Annie was my early and longtime fave when I was little. But also the original Star Wars. Yeah. That was a big one for us. Then my dad had a bunch of movies that he would make us watch all the time, like Hoosiers. I've seen Hoosiers so many times. It's bonkers. So things like that. But so it was always a big part of our lives. My parents and my grandparents made theater a really big part of our lives. And then my parents were really open to us seeing movies, going to movies, renting movies. That was just what we did.
Now, you mentioned to me earlier that you did perform on stage and you had an audition anxiety and then decided you didn't want to be an actor, so you went into casting. How did that whole transition happen?
Oh, man. So I loved musicals. I've always loved musicals. And I started, I think the very first musical I was ever in, I was in 6th grade, and I was in Annie, of course. I was one of the orphans. And I think as I sort of moved into my teenage years, that whole self-consciousness of being a teenager just hit me hard. And
Hmm.
I was in school and I would audition for my, middle school or high school musical, and this is just in front of my choir teacher and like the drama director. This is not
Sure.
high stakes by any means. And I could sing and I could act, but the moment I would get in front of them, I just wouldn't be able to breathe.
Wow.
I would really struggle. I wouldn't be able to get through a song. I would just be kind of huffing and puffing my way through it. And partly, I think, because they probably didn't have that many people volunteering for these things, and also partly because they didn't know my ability outside of auditioning. They always gave me a role, gratefully. um, and once I was on stage, I was fine. Once the part was mine, and I felt like I wasn't having that moment of judgment, I guess,
Yeah.
I was okay. But I really thought about acting. I thought about taking on, because I really did love being on stage and collaborating, and I just love the process so much. But I just didn't think that I could let go of my self-consciousness ultimately. And to this day, I mean, I can read with an actor in audition, piece of cake, no problem. If I have to read a role at a table read where there are a bunch of people listening to me, I will again turn bright red, start to lose my breath, the whole thing.
That's crazy. Now, does this affect you in other facets of your life, like a performance
Never,
anxiety?
never. And I can give a speech in front of hundreds of people. Like, this never affects me.
Wow, that is really fascinating.
It's kooky. It's very kooky.
Have you ever thought about taking on regional theater or something like that?
No, no. I mean, in my heart, I would love that so much, but I think now, having been in casting for so long, I have a really strong appreciation for what the actors go through
Hmm.
and what kind of, how they have honed their craft over the years and everything else. And I have honed my craft in casting and not in acting. And I think jumping into community theater, while it would be wildly fun, and surely there are other people like me in community theater, I just know that I wouldn't be living up to my own expectations of what I think an actor should be doing.
Sure, sure.
So,
I totally get it. When I was a kid, I actually thought I wanted to take up fencing.
right.
And then I took a few lessons, and standing there with the foil in my hand and learning there were all these rules and regulations, I quickly realized that I actually really wanted to be a sword fighter like Conan the Barbarian in a movie. So I get it. But let's talk about travel. Did you travel when you were growing up with your family?
Yes, a ton. So every winter, just to escape the tundra, is we would go someplace warm with my grandparents for like a week in February. Every summer of my life, for the first 30 years of my life, I guess, we went to Martha's Vineyard with my grandparents.
Oh yeah, it's an awesome place. It's so
Oh God,
beautiful.
it was so wonderful. I love that place so much.
Yeah, I used to live in Boston, and we used to go down there all the time to hang out. I mean, it's such a great place.
Oh, it's so great. And Boston's great too. So we would just travel all around with them. And, so my hometown is about an hour-ish short of the Canadian border. So we would go up to Winnipeg sometimes, if we wanted to go into a city.
So, what do you like most about traveling?
Oh, I just love new places. I love the idea of seeing something that I had in my mind kind of come to life in front of me. I love One of my favorite parts about traveling is the research ahead of time.
Hmm.
I just love it so much. I love thinking about what I could see, what I could do. If it's another language, how do they pronounce things? If I can get my mouth around that. I love the anticipation. I love packing for a trip. I love getting in the car on the way to the airport for a trip. I mean, I love that whole leading up to it, that moment
I love
of,
when you're first boarding the plane and you find your
oh,
seat, and you're like, "Yeah, it's awesome."
it's like it's really happening.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
just, there's something just really exciting about that, knowing that you're going to do something either, you know, familiar and fun, or something just completely different and new. I think it's really, really special.
And I think what's amazing too is that today there are so many incredible tools for research, between all the digital books you can put on an e-reader to, of course, all the websites and travel blogs like mine and other people's that have reviews of places and beautiful photographs and video. You get to experience, even when we were all kids, it's so much more, there's so much more information than when we were kids.
Oh my gosh. I mean, it's amazing. I remember when I first started traveling on my own as an adult to foreign places, you would really only have Lonely Planet. Like that was, you would go get the Lonely Planet guide, and that was your thing, and you would bring it with you, and
Yeah,
you'd
carrying
have to
around this
track
huge,
it.
heavy book.
Exactly. And now it's just so different. There's so many different ways to, and it's especially great, I think, when you're traveling with other people. So, like, for example, my husband and I will sometimes travel with other couples, to be able to collaborate on the research ahead of time and send each other links to things and
Yeah, share a
share.
Pinterest board.
Yes, exactly. Share a Pinterest board, share a document, whatever, and have a sort of a common goal.
Where was the first place that you traveled internationally?
The first place I went to was Japan. When I was 14, I was an exchange student for about 3 weeks.
How was that?
It was crazy, amazing. It was just completely different. I mean, I talk about a brand new experience. My host family barely spoke English. And so it was just very different. I had traveled plenty and been away from my parents plenty, so that wasn't intimidating. And, we were in a school group, so I had classmates and things nearby. But man, Japan is just, I mean, it's about as opposite as North Dakota as you can get.
Yeah, I would imagine. Yeah. I've actually never been there, but it's very high on my bucket list.
It's really beautiful and really special. And the people were so wonderful, so welcoming and so kind. Really, it was a short time there in the scheme of things, but it was really incredible.
Now, do you like Japanese food?
I do. I love all Asian food.
Yeah, me too. It's awesome.
Yeah.
What's your favorite dish?
Oh gosh, it would probably be Thai. It would probably be some sort of Thai dish, or maybe maybe not. I do love me some banh mi and some pho. So who knows?
Well, you were talking about traveling with other people. You're a mom now. So have you been able to travel with your child? And if so, what's it like? And how's it different beyond obvious things from when you weren't a mom?
Sure. Yes, we have. We've traveled with him a lot, actually, only within the United States. It is very challenging to travel with with a small child. When I travel by myself, I've gotten to the point now where I can pack very minimally for myself, but my child needs a ton of shit. And packing for him is an event in itself, and making sure you don't forget something, and what happens if you do forget it? Like, how replaceable is it? Is there an alternative? All of those things, making sure you have enough stuff, not only to pack, his stuff always has to be checked because there's just so much of it.
Well, how old is he now?
He's 2 now.
2 now. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a little less now than it was before, but only a little. But also just making sure, okay, so if this stuff is checked, do we have the stuff we need for the airplane? Making sure you have things that can keep him entertained for the airplane, but also so he can sleep on the airplane and eat on the airplane. It's just, it's a thing, Daniel.
Do you try to keep your trips with him to shorter plane rides? Nothing like, not a 12-hour trip?
Yeah. Yeah. We were invited to a very, very dear friend's wedding in Melbourne, Australia, and we really thought about going, and then we thought, no.
Oh, that's a bummer.
It's too long to be away from him for him to be with grandparents, and it's definitely way too big of a thing to bring him. So someday, we will gladly travel with him abroad someday, but now it's not the time.
Well, speaking of childhood, I love to ask people, just because I think it's fun, what's your favorite childhood book?
Oh gosh, I think I went through a big phase in my youth where I really just didn't like reading. It felt like it was the boring alternative to playing. So I had, some young child, young kid books that I loved. I always loved Angelina Ballerina and the 12 Dancing Princesses and Corduroy and things like that, The Giving Tree. Yeah. But then when I was maybe like 12 or 13 is when I really got back into reading again for pleasure. And that's when I got into like Judy Blume and all of those books.
That's Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret, and all that?
Oh, yeah. All of them. Those were a big family fave for a long time.
Is there a particular book that you really want to make sure that your son reads?
We're kind of doing that with him. He really loves books, which I'm very grateful for. He loves reading. He has started memorizing some of these books, and he'll, regurgitate them to us in his own little language.
Future actor right there, then.
Yeah, well, he is definitely a little ham. I mean, I'm keeping my eye on him for sure. But yeah, The Giving Tree, I think, is a very special, important book for all kids. For all, it doesn't matter where you come from or who you are. I just think it's a really special one. But he loves The Snowy Day. He loves Corduroy. He loves pretty much anything by Sandra Boynton, who writes like the Belly Button book and all of these little kid books.
That's awesome. Well, hey, we're going to talk about your career for a little bit. Could you explain to the listeners so they know what exactly a casting director does?
Sure. So we help pick out the actors for the roles in TV, movies, theater, short films, web series, etc. There's a whole process that goes into that. We facilitate lists of ideas, we facilitate auditions and all of that, and then we collaborate with our other creatives to ultimately pick the person for the role, the actor for the role.
And have you traveled for your career?
Only a little bit. I have mostly traveled for teaching. So, and within casting. So, I teach audition technique a lot. So I haven't had to really travel so much for casting specifically, like casting a project. But I have traveled around a lot, teaching different classes. I've taught in Australia and the UK and all over the Southeast, in New York and San Francisco and Vegas, all kinds of places like that.
So as a casting director, what is one single piece of advice with all your experience that you would give to actors?
Trust casting. That's really the biggest thing. I think so many actors see casting directors as the enemy or the hurdle that they have to get over. And really, we're rooting for you. We want you to succeed so much. And I think if actors remember that, it might, maybe help alleviate some audition anxiety, but also just know that you do have somebody on your side at all levels of the process. Just remember that when you walk into that room or when you send in your self-tape, that we are excited to see you. We chose you to get to this point.
What I think is fascinating, and Jolene works with commercial casting directors.
Sure.
She explained to me that the number of people that actually submit to an audition versus the number that actually get the call for the audition, the number is incredible. So just to get an actual audition as an actor is a huge deal.
It's huge. The ratio is bonkers.
Yeah.
Depending on the role, of course, but it can be bonkers. That's really the thing to remember is that if you've gotten to that point, we culled you out of a group of possibly thousands of people and gave you the opportunity because we find you interesting. We think you could bring something to this role. There's something about you that is just intriguing and we want to know more. So we're excited. We want to see you. And I think if you can remember that and hold on to that thought, that will help your confidence, help you get over some of those nerves, help you have conviction in your choices, just knowing that there's something we've already seen in you that we like.
What was your first casting job?
Oh, boy. Well, outside of casting my own film school projects, which we won't talk about, they were terrible. I think my very first real assistant job, because I had internships starting when I was 18, but my very first real casting assistant job was on a TV show called Threshold, which was on CBS. And I was fresh out of college. That was sort of a big sci-fi year for the networks. And we were the alien sci-fi show. There were witches and sea monsters that year and something else. I can't remember. Probably vampires. We were aliens. And it didn't last. It was one season, but I worked with some really, really terrific people. And the casting director on that show is actually a very distant cousin of mine. And that's how I got that job.
Oh, that's cool.
So, yeah. So, your connections in this industry really do matter.
I agree. What was the most challenging career moment for you in casting so far?
There's some politics in the industry, and it's not just in casting, it's across the board. Writers deal with it, directors, actors, producers, everybody deals with it. And every time it comes up, it's infuriating because you want everything to be about the work. You want it to be about the talent and that gut feeling that you get when you know something is completely right, that this is the person, from a casting side of things, this is the actor. But it doesn't always go that person's way for whatever reason, whether it's a look thing or a diversity thing or do they fit in on the poster with everybody else thing or whatever.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm actually friends with a few directors, and one of them was telling me he's done a ton of TV, and he was telling me that he fought really hard. He and the casting director fought really hard for this one particular actor for a big budget show. I don't want to name it, but and he was telling me that when it came down to the last minute, the showrunner came to them and just said, "Hey, I appreciate that, but my cousin is going to take the role because I want them to have it. I'm going to do them a favor." And so this person had gone through, the actor had gone through all these hoops and almost had the job, and at the last minute, the cousin nepotism won. So it's interesting.
Yeah, that's a hard pill to swallow. It doesn't happen constantly, thank God, but it does happen, and it can be really disheartening when it does, because then it's not about the work. It's about this thing, this relationship. So that's usually the hardest part for me, is just when those moments have come up of just swallowing my pride and knowing that it's not the end of the world, no matter how disappointed I am. It's just something that I can chalk up to another experience and move on. But it hurts every time.
If you didn't work in casting, what would you do?
I've thought about this a lot, because there were times in casting where I'm like, oh, I'm so tired, I should just do something else. But ultimately, it's this. Really, I really do love it. I have thought about going away, of taking classes just in something completely different, thinking that maybe I wanted to explore that. I didn't, as it turned out. But it's this. I love casting. The other facet of this that I do love so much is teaching. I love teaching audition technique. I love seeing light bulbs go off for actors as they realize that they are capable of something that they didn't think they were capable of.
Yeah.
It's just, they really do go hand in hand really beautifully. So I feel really lucky that I have found something that it's sort of multifaceted like this, that I really just enjoy the crap out of.
That's awesome. I wanted to ask you, on the serious side of things, over the last few years, the Me Too movement and others like it have given a voice and a platform to issues that obviously needed to come to light. I was curious, what are the biggest changes that you've seen on the casting side, and how has all this affected you as both a woman and as a casting director with a long career in the business?
I think, unfortunately, I think change is a little slow. However, I think there is a lot more respect for women just across the board in the industry that's coming up. Like I said, change is slow. I think that there's still plenty of misogyny and bad behavior and everything else that we need to, face and handle and deal with. But I think the way people speak about actresses, for example, for female actors, has changed. Back when I first started, there was just crazy sexism, and at the time it didn't feel weird, because it was just something that we were all dealing with. But people would make, producers would make comments on a woman's looks, and didn't matter how great her performance was, if she didn't have a certain body type or whatever, they just were never going to hire her. And they don't talk that way about men necessarily. Mm-hmm. Almost ever. The comparison is very stark when it comes to that stuff. The men that I have worked with since the Me Too movement, and really just, I've worked with some really wonderful male producers who aren't like that. But definitely since the Me Too movement, if they think it, they're not saying it. Whereas before they would say it partly to get a laugh from people, from the other male producers. Now it's just this person isn't for me, let's look at somebody else. That is, I think, a strong change. It's not going to get us where we need to go necessarily, but it's a decent change.
And how do you employ things when you teach? Do you try to, I know obviously the focus is audition technique, but do you try to slip in, a bit of a moral compass education in these classes?
Yes and no. I think, a lot of the actors, they're not necessarily, I think what's the right way to say this? The actors who are taking audition technique from me are very early in their careers or young in their careers in comparison to like the Kevin Spaceys of the world, right?
Sure.
Who can really abuse their position because they do have power. So these folks, I think, have a really good understanding of professionalism and how to behave on set. I think SAG-AFTRA coming up with the intimacy coordinators to have on sets now is a huge, wonderful benefit.
Can you actually explain those for the audience?
Sure. Well, what I know of them, these are people who are going to be included on set for a SAG-AFTRA project when there is an intimate scene being filmed. So this is to make sure that any sort of nudity writers or simulated sex writers that the actors have signed, the production is adhering to them. If it's supposed to be a closed set, this person will make sure that it is indeed a closed set. This person will be sort of an extra conduit. So if an actor is feeling uncomfortable about a situation, they can talk to this person. This person will then, help communicate that to production. Just having that person on their side, knowing that I think there's some fear that if you say something directly to the director, to the executive producer, get fired or cut or whatever, if you show any sort of sign of not being willing to take one for the team or go for it, an actor shouldn't have to deal with that when they're doing a simulated
Correct.
scene.
Yes.
So that's what these people are, hopefully that is the bulk of their intention. So just having people like that so that actors know that it is safe for them to advocate for themselves, so that if somebody is indeed behaving inappropriately during, for example, with a scene like that, they do have a clear course of action to take that should make them feel safe. That's always my biggest thing that I always tell actors, when you're auditioning, we don't ever want you to feel unsafe in our casting rooms, in our casting offices. We don't want you to make a reader or a casting director feel unsafe either.
Right.
So that's usually the thing, because younger actors are learning that still. They'll make a choice to bring in like a knife for a scene that calls for a knife. When I'm like, please don't ever do that ever again. So there's a little bit of that, which of course is not a Me Too thing. It's just
it's a life thing. Yeah.
Yes, it's a life thing. It's learning what is appropriate and what isn't appropriate.
If you wanted to give a piece of advice to actors out there, both men and women, but mostly women, I think that if they ever have to face a situation where they're in a place where something inappropriate is happening, what is your advice to them?
Please don't be afraid to speak up. It doesn't have to be to the absolute person in charge, but tell somebody and start documenting it in writing some way, somehow to somebody. Your feelings about it are important. And if you're feeling it, somebody else may be too. So please trust yourself and trust that if it ultimately, doesn't work out for you on this project because of this, it will not hurt you going forward. Okay. This is something where we want you to be safe. Casting directors don't ever want to send an actor to a set and hear that something happened that made them unsafe, whether it was, sexually or otherwise physically or anything else. So please don't be afraid to say something and know that you will be taken seriously.
Thank you so much for being willing to talk about all of that, as it's a very important subject.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to ask you, what's something in your life you would give up to become an even better casting director?
Oh man, well I think I did. We left Los Angeles, and that was for my son. Just we didn't have any family there, and we wanted to be closer to my husband's parents live here. But leaving that hub, the hub of everything, meant that I was giving up the trajectory of my career, essentially, for this new lifestyle. And I don't know if it's necessarily made me better at casting, although it has made me dive way back into the deep end of researching, because I'm in a whole new market. So researching the actors here, getting to know the actors here, cultivating relationships with the agents here, it is like starting over in a lot of ways. So it has been an interesting challenge, but absolutely worth it. I mean, my child is thriving, and we're really happy here. So
you have 4 seasons and there's no major fires.
So far, yeah, exactly. But yeah, it is, I was really busy and really active and working on some great things in Los Angeles. So that we kind of put that aside, but it was definitely the right choice for us.
That's really great. Let's circle back to travel for a bit. Where are some of your favorite places you've been on planet Earth?
Well, Martha's Vineyard is definitely up there for me. I have so many amazing memories of our summers there. One of the best places my husband and I have ever have ever traveled is the Patagonia region down in Chile and Argentina.
Oh, yeah.
It is just,
Did you get to do some hiking down there and everything?
oh yeah. We did hiking. My husband did fishing. We did horseback riding. It is something else. It is so beautiful and still largely untouched.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of amazing.
Now, did you break that flight up and spend some time in Peru, or did you just go right to Patagonia?
Yeah, maybe like 20 hours in Peru, something like that. So we got a little sleep, very little sleep, and then we got a tour guide for the day to just take us around Lima. And then so I think we landed at like midnight, and then got up in the morning, toured all day, and then we had like a 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock at night flight. So we, had most of a day in Lima.
Yeah, but at least you took advantage of, a speed trip. That's great.
Oh yeah, it was great. It was really fun.
What's your favorite way to get acquainted with a new place when you go to somewhere you've never been before?
We really like walking tours. Just having somebody take you on a 2-hour walk around some of the big places in a city, or like the UK is great for bus tours like that, the hop on, hop off bus tours.
Sure, yeah.
But just to kind of orient you and also give you some highlights. It's also a great way to ask questions directly of somebody who's from there. That I think is always a good way for us to start anywhere. It's either we go on a walking tour or we'll just walk around. We'll drop everything and just start ambling around town and stopping to eat and then doing a little bit more research about where we want to go. But it's usually day one is a quiet-ish day like that where we're just kind of figuring our...
Well, especially if you're going overseas and there's a little bit of jet lag, it's always good to have like a relaxing day.
Jet lag or another language or whatever. And
or both.
Yes, exactly.
Is there anything that you don't like about traveling?
Just the jet lag. I tell you, the older I get, the harder the jet lag hits me. And it's usually coming back, I think, is the worst when you're trying to get back into your life and you're having a really hard time functioning.
Well, I'm about a decade older than you, Erica, and I'm here to tell you that it only gets worse, so don't worry.
I can imagine. It has changed exponentially from when I was 25 till now. So,
yeah. No, I mean, when I was like 24, 25, I used to be able to travel. I could fly 12 hours, get off a plane and be like, what jet lag? And now I'm just like, where's the hotel room? I want to lay down.
I'm going to need all of the coffee and the closest bed.
Time for I will tell people the secret of jet lag, I think, is like when we went to Scotland last year, it's really important if you arrive at a destination and it's daytime, don't go to bed. Yes. It's the worst thing you can do.
Yes, you have to stay up.
Yeah, just force yourself and stay up. And we did that. And then the next day, you sleep really hard that night. And then the next day you're good to go. So,
well, and I also think that when you're going there, the anticipation of being there and the excitement of being there will help you as well. It's coming back where you're
totally
just like,
agree. Yeah.
Oh, I'm back.
I got to go back to my life now. Yeah.
Yes.
Has the majority of your travel been by yourself or with other people?
I've almost always been with somebody, whether it be, my husband now is my number one travel buddy, or friends, or we've traveled with other couples, or I've gone on a girls trip with my best friends or things like that. But yeah, it's usually with somebody. I've never traveled abroad on my own, not because I haven't wanted to, just, I think when I say I want to go somewhere, somebody else says, oh, I want to go there too. And I'm like, great, let's go.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I did England and Scotland by myself when I was 24, I think. And it was great. It was a great experience. But having done them with Jolene, I just far prefer traveling with someone I love. I still do things by myself. I'll take a weekend or I'll go hiking or do something, whatever. But so the solitary experience can be really, really joyful. And I don't want to poo-poo it at all because I think it's important. But I do think having the memories of sharing with someone, and plus, then you get to have pictures together and memories together, and you both get to remember things later. And So are you a gear person at all? Do you like travel toys and technology and all that?
Kind of a technophobe in a lot of ways, Daniel.
Really?
Yes.
But your whole career centers around computers and technology.
I know. And I really have to pull up my big girl pants to make sure I know what I'm doing with it. But I'm very old school. Like if it weren't so bulky to carry around a Lonely Planet book, I would do that.
Well, I mean, I have them now on my iPad. I buy them digitally.
Well, there's that too, but I don't have an iPad. So, I don't do any of that stuff.
Well, you and Jillian are soul sisters a bit because I've been trying to get her to buy an iPad for like 8 years and she refuses. She's like, nope, you have one. It's fine. I'm like, but that's mine.
Yeah, I just don't need another thing, you know? If I could throw my phone out the window and not feel like I lost a limb, I would do it.
That's so funny. Is there somewhere you haven't traveled yet that you really want to go?
All of Italy.
Oh, awesome.
I've only ever been to Venice. I think I'm Jewish. I'm not remotely Italian, but I think somewhere deep in my soul, I was 100% Italian.
You know what's really cool about that?
What?
Many years ago, this is quite a while ago, actually, I had an ex take me to see a psychic for my birthday. It's a very LA thing to do.
Sure.
And so we go there, and I'm a little bit of a skeptic about these things, right? You know, but anyway, she tells me all this really cool stuff about my life and the future and all these things. And at some point I looked at her and I just said, hey, could you tell me something about my life that there's no way you could possibly know so that I can believe that everything you're saying is true? And so, no joke, she recounts a story from my past that there's no way she could have known. I've never told anybody the story. It completely blew my mind. And so what's funny, though, about this story is one of the things that she later told me in the session was that I was Italian, that in a past life I used to be Italian and I was an inventor and I didn't have very good vision and I had a bunch of kids. And so I don't know, maybe I was Leonardo da Vinci or I was one of his little assistants working in a lab somewhere. Who knows, you know? I will say that knowing I was Italian in a past life, allegedly, does explain a few things like, you know, why I'm so hairy.
I'm telling you, maybe we were Italian siblings or
Wouldn't
something.
That be cool? Yeah, or neighbors or whatever.
You know,
yeah.
I feel it deep in my, I mean, I know everybody loves pasta, but
I love Italian food, yeah.
I know I have just not only the food, but I love the language. I love just the history in Italy and the landscape.
Well, Erica, you need to cast a movie in Italy where you have to go there and then be on location casting for a year.
Oh man, I would die of happiness.
Well, if you won the lottery tomorrow, you had like $20 million, would you stop casting and just travel?
I wouldn't stop entirely, I don't think, because as much as I like traveling, I'm also a homebody. I do really like coming home and getting back into my routine. It's a mix, but I would love to spend more than 2 weeks somewhere.
Yeah.
I would love to go someplace and live there for like 6 months.
Absolutely.
And just, use that as a place to be my home base to explore in other regions as well, but also just get to know people, cook, shop at the local market, the whole thing.
Do you have a favorite food of all time?
Of all time.
Like last meal on earth, Erica, what would it be?
I mean, probably chocolate, let's just be honest about that.
I'm a chocolate snob, so I'm self-admitted. Jolene introduced me to some European chocolate, and I can no longer eat American waxy chocolate because I'm spoiled now. So what's your favorite chocolate bar?
That's the good stuff. Well, I mean, I like a lot of like junky chocolate, like Halloween is my time of year, but but I do, they have some of those fancier chocolate bars now that have, anything to me with sea salt or salted caramel or something like that.
Yummy.
Forget it, man. I could just drown in it.
Indeed. I'm going to actually steer the ship to a slightly different direction out of left field. I love to talk about the reality of relationships. And I'm just very curious because you are a very successful woman and you have a busy life raising a child and all this stuff that you do. Do you and your husband have difficulty finding time for each other?
Yes, it is very, very hard. Having a child changes everything. We had the experience of, we both worked a lot of hours when we lived in Los Angeles, and we both had long commutes. So we actually had limited time together when we were in LA, but we would make the most of it when we did have time off together. Whereas now that we have our 2-year-old and we have a house, like when we have time off together, we do things for our son and we do things to fix the house and, all of it just has completely changed.
Well, some of that stuff can be romantic, when you're doing house fixing stuff, you can make that fun.
It can be. And thankfully, we have a really strong relationship and we can get goofy doing the stupidest things. So we still have fun, but it is definitely much harder to just focus on us and not on all of the other things around us.
Well, it's only for like 16 more years and then you'll go off to college.
That's right. Then we'll have to figure it out again.
The last thing I like to do with everybody is a game I have called 299 Philosophical and Life Questions with Moonbird. And what I did was I collected 299 really fun questions from family, friends, and the lovely internet. And you get to pick two numbers, and I'm going to ask you those random questions.
Great. 56 and 39.
56 and 39. Here we go. 56. What's one of your favorite songs?
Let's see. I'm gonna pick something from Singing in the Rain, which is one of my all-time favorite musicals. So I'm gonna say Make 'Em Laugh.
Okay. And you said 39, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so 39. Beyond your own family, what are you most thankful for?
That I have a job that I really love. You know, I've seen a lot of people who are vaguely miserable in their work, and they're just kind of trying to get through it to get to the point where they can retire or, you know, whatever. I really love what I do, and I feel really, really lucky that I found something that makes me feel that way.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Erica, thank you so much for calling in and being a part of the podcast. You're really great.
Thank you, as are you.
Friends and listeners, you've heard how awesome Erica is, and I want to give her a free plug and tell any of you actors out there that if you want to do a career consultation with her, you should go to her website right now. I did one myself several years ago, and it is very much because of that consultation that I'm here now talking to you on this podcast. I learned a tremendous amount of cool stuff about myself and about her and my career path, and she's awesome, and you should go there right now. I mean, not if you're driving, because Moonbird's all about you living adventurously, not dangerously, but hey, as soon as you're not driving, go there, book a session with her. She is fantastic. It's ericasbreamcasting.com, ERICASBREAM casting.com, or just Google Erica Silverman Bream. She's amazing. You're amazing. Listeners, thank you. And as always, have a great day. And if you want more Moonbird in your life, and hey, who wouldn't? Head on over to memoriesofamoonbird.com or visit me on social media at Memories of a Moonbird.